Israel has finally taken the plunge. It has begun invading southern Lebanon. Events in the Middle East are progressing at breakneck speed. While just yesterday, here on VisualPolitik, we were telling you about Netanyahu's plans and how the ground operation was highly probable. It only took a few hours for this to become a reality.
The IDF began limited, localized, and targeted ground raids based on precise intelligence against Hezbollah terrorist targets and infrastructure in southern Lebanon. These targets are located in villages close to the border and pose an immediate threat to Israeli communities in northern Israel. And that's not even mentioning Iran's response and the possible consequences of the attack with 180 missiles. As we said, events are unfolding at a rapid pace, but we'll talk about that in a future video. For now, we want to focus on Lebanon, where Israel is already unleashing ground operations.
For now, we're talking about small raids, carried out by small groups of commandos, accompanied by air cover, and the backing of artillery fire from Israel. We're talking about advanced units that may be preparing the ground for a much more extensive invasion. And this VisualPolitik community is not something to be taken lightly. The IDF have stationed hundreds of tanks and thousands of soldiers on the Lebanese border, ready to pounce on Lebanese territory at any moment. Thus, the modus operandi could be very similar to that carried out in Gaza just before the major ground incursion that still continues to this day. Because we told you in our last video, Netanyahu is not going to step on the brakes until he achieves all his goals.
The elimination of Nasrallah is a very important step, but it is not everything. We will use all the capabilities we have.
The Lebanese army, which was deploying on the border with Israel, has had to retreat several kilometers to the north so as not to interfere with Israeli operations. What's more, it's in an area where a mission of UN Blue Helmets, UNIFIL, is also stationed. In theory, these forces should have served to ensure security in southern Lebanon and northern Israel. In order to guarantee this peace, it stands to reason that one of its main functions should have been to prevent Hezbollah from operating from southern Lebanon and to keep the entire region as demilitarized as possible. Nevertheless, after 46 years deployed there, it has achieved absolutely nothing. What good have they done then? Good question. Unfortunately, we aren't able to answer that one. Or maybe it's simply that the question has no answer. Of course, the Blue Helmets have served neither to guarantee Israel's security nor peace in the region. Throughout these years, the presence and activity of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon has been constant. The launching of rockets, missiles, and all kinds of devices against Israel has practically become a local sport, and nobody did anything. As a result, that lack of action has come back to haunt them. But in order not to get lost, it's important that we remember something important. As far as the Lebanese side in this conflict is concerned, there is, on the one hand, Hezbollah, this huge Shiite paramilitary group directly controlled by Iran that is at war against Israel, and on the other, the Lebanese state and the Lebanese army. Two forces that, although they've agreed to coexist in some way, are not the same. In this case, everything indicates that Jerusalem will have the capacity to operate in all of southern Lebanon without interference from the Lebanese army. Their objective? To cleanse the entire region of Hezbollah. That is, to destroy its weapons arsenal, eliminate its rocket launchers, terminate its military forces, and more or less secure peace in the area. Or rather, that this place ceases to be a constant threat to Israel. In other words, we may be looking at the ultimate operation, the move that will deal the final blow to Hezbollah's ability to attack Israel for a long time to come. Nevertheless, this doesn't mean that it will disappear, and this is why we need to ask several questions. How far does Israel want to go with this ground operation? Are we looking at a sequel to the 2006 Lebanon War? What role can the Lebanese state and its armed forces play during and after this invasion? Is this a golden opportunity to completely reconfigure Israel's security situation? Well, VisualPolitik community, it's time to take a look at all the key aspects of this operation.
War for peace.
Following the Hamas attacks of 7th of October, almost a year ago, Netanyahu had it clear. Israel could no longer be satisfied with bombing and punitive operations, which in the end let things continue as they were. Not this time. The time had come for the total annihilation of their two closest enemies, Hamas and also Hezbollah. And as we say around here, no sooner said than done. On top of the complete intervention in Gaza with unprecedented force was added the elimination of the entire leadership of Hezbollah, and now also the incursion with ground troops into southern Lebanon. And so the war has moved into what may be its final phase. By deploying troops on the ground, Israel seeks to completely eliminate the military capabilities of Iran's two puppets in the region, which basically means one thing: wiping out much of Iran's influence in the Middle East in one fell swoop. So much so, if you notice, notice, no Arab power is complaining too much about Israel's actions, even if it means destroying the entire Gaza Strip or bombing Lebanon's capital. This time it's in the interests of the Sunni Arab powers to have a weakened Iran, and that's exactly what Israel is doing, so it's a win-win situation for them. What's more, in private, these are the kinds of comments that seem to be going around.
Saudi Crown Prince said he personally doesn't care about Palestinian issue.
Be that as it may, the point is that Israel has begun the operation it has been wanting to undertake for years. Take a look at this map. Israel has declared as a closed military zone the surroundings of 3 border towns in the northeast of the country, from which the raids are being carried out. And that's not all. Meanwhile, at the time of making this video, Israel continues to launch attacks on the neighborhood of Dahia, south of Beirut, an area completely controlled by Hezbollah. Yes, exactly, we're talking about the main stronghold of the Lebanese terrorist group in the capital. The same neighborhood where Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah was annihilated. And not only that, Israel is also extending its punitive airstrike operations over Syria. And of course, in the face of all these frenetic developments, the big question arises by itself. How far can the Israelis go? And what exactly are they hoping for with this operation? Well, the answer to the second question can be found here.
Israel vows to return people north. Many residents see war as only way.
The Israeli government is not willing to prolong the situation of the 67,500 Israelis who have been evacuated from their homes in the north of the country for almost a year. Because nearly 70,000 Israelis from areas bordering Lebanon have been virtual refugees inside their own country for about 11 months, something that was already beginning to take its toll on the government.
I've lost my patience. Anyone who is a terrorist should be just murdered. It's enough. How can we live like this?
The beheading of Hezbollah, first with the operation of the exploding pagers and walkie-talkies, followed by the elimination of its entire leadership, would not be complete if they left their military capabilities more or less intact. Remember that, as we've already told you on several occasions, Hezbollah is a group with about 25,000 active militants and about 30,000 reservists, who are armed with about 150,000 missiles and rockets, and thousands of drones, among other equipment. So it's clear that eliminating their leadership does not equate to finishing the job. If you leave their arsenals and launch sites intact, sooner rather than later, Hezbollah could reorganize and seek revenge. It's only a matter of time before the power vacuum is filled, a new leadership takes the helm, and the group becomes even more violent. Naturally, this is a risk the Israeli government cannot afford to take. So this Israeli operation in southern Lebanon, the terrorist group's main area of operations, was inevitable. But what if I told you that besides the military and strategic issues, Israel also feels legally entitled to do all this? This time, Israel is going full throttle, not least because in Jerusalem they understand that in this case, the international rules give them a free hand. You see, the answer could be found in Resolution 1701 of the Sinking Nations. United Nations. We're talking about a resolution that was adopted in 2006, right at the end of the Lebanon War, that was fought that same year. Basically, what this resolution established was that a demilitarized zone of 1,060 square kilometers should be created, an area between the Blue Line, as the border between Lebanon and Israel is known, and the Litani River. In this area that you are seeing highlighted on the screen, in theory, only the Lebanese army and the UN Blue Helmets could be in possession of weapons and military equipment in this space. Nevertheless, do you want to know what happened? Well, take a look for yourselves. What you see on the map are Hezbollah military infrastructure identified up to January of 2024. From these points, they not only launch missiles against Israel, but also hide numerous terrorists. And it is in these places that they keep a good proportion of their weapons. And this is by no means a recent development. Hezbollah has been operating in these places for a very long time, years and years, without the Lebanese army daring to do anything at all. And of course, let's not even talk about the Blue Helmets, because remember, until very recently, Hezbollah has had a lot of power. And what is the most striking thing about all this? Well, as you may have noticed, this huge military field of operations of the Shiite militia coincides exactly with the supposed demilitarized zone established by the UN resolution. Tremendous work, Blue Helmets. There's no other way to say it. The thing is that for this reason, Israel believes it has every right in the world to terminate all military infrastructure in this zone, which is precisely what they are doing, because with their intervention, they can even enforce a mandate from the UN itself. Remember, escalate to de-escalate? Well, here we go again. So what's going to happen? Obviously, we don't know yet, but it's possible that the Israelis limit themselves to intervening in this region, and then maybe, one way or another, stay over there, or at least maintain control to do the same thing they're doing in Gaza, establish a security corridor.
US officials believe Israel will not conduct full invasion of Lebanon. American officials said they believe that Israel was planning only smaller, targeted incursions in southern Lebanon.
Of course, small and specific incursions are quite subjective. Is more than 1,000 square kilometers a small area? It certainly wouldn't be a total invasion of Lebanon, but small, you can't exactly call it small either. We're talking about a huge blow to Hezbollah's infrastructure in an area larger than countries like Bahrain or Singapore. But this seems to be Israel's intention, which is not very much in line with the wishes of its biggest ally. In recent months, Israeli and US plans have been going in quite different directions. The Biden administration has been sending conciliatory messages for weeks now, trying to arrange an agreement that would stop hostilities between the two sides.
US preparing plan for temporary Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire.
Meanwhile, Netanyahu's plans couldn't be further off. As we've already told you, Israel is seeking the total elimination of its closest threats because they believe that this is the only way they will be able to protect their citizens. And not only that, this time they also want to achieve another goal: to set a precedent. To make it clear that any aggression against Israel will be responded to at the highest level. Remember what we told you in our recent video about the concept of civis Romanus sum? I am a Roman citizen. Well, precisely in that vein. And this intention will not be stopped even by Uncle Sam. At least not until Netanyahu considers that he has completely finished the job, which of course would give him a very significant political gain. If King Bibi manages to emerge victorious, it's quite possible that his re-election will follow very close behind. Even so, pay attention to the United States. Make no mistake. While maintaining this line, Washington is deploying more troops in the Middle East to deter Iran from entering the conflict and, if necessary, to support Israel's security. So it's not like the White House has turned its back on its Israeli ally or anything. In fact, Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin has thrown his support behind the ground intervention. But, VisualPolitik community, there are a few more questions that we still have to answer. Could we be facing the beginning of a full-scale war in Lebanon, something similar to what happened in 2006? What role could the Lebanese army itself play from now on? And what would this mean in terms of security for Israel? Well, let's find out.
A total reboot?
First of all, the big question that many of us are asking is, are we on the verge of another Lebanon war like the one 18 years ago? Well, in order to answer this question, we have to do some memory recall. So let's get on with it. Similar to what is expected to happen with this invasion, the 2006 war was mostly confined to southern Lebanon, although on that occasion the fighting there was intense and prolonged. But not only that, in 2006, Israel also attacked Beirut on numerous occasions, especially the Dahia neighborhood, a Hezbollah stronghold, which is exactly the same as what they're doing now. Of course, their operations on that occasion caused enormous damage to Lebanese infrastructure and were a tremendous discredit to the Lebanese government. Even Beirut airport was bombed and flights had to be diverted to Cyprus. Well, the point is that in 2006, the Lebanese army did virtually nothing either, and the fighting was mainly between Israel and Hezbollah. In theory, it doesn't seem a very different scenario from the one that may occur now. However, the devil is in the details. It's true that Hezbollah did not have as much weaponry as now, but it did have its command structures practically intact, and its militiamen highly motivated to resist 34 long days of fighting. Now, however, none of that is happening. The Israeli operation right now seeks to give the Lebanese group no room to reorganize and plan attacks in response to the elimination of Nasrallah and all the attacks the organization has received. What's more, the 2006 operation was a disaster for the Israelis, to the point that after that war, Hezbollah emerged stronger, both politically and militarily. It presented itself to the world as a resistance force that had been able to stand up to the powerful Israeli army. That was, in fact, what made Iran redouble its efforts up until the present time to arm and finance the group, to the point of turning them into an entire military arm under direct orders from Tehran. But not surprisingly, Israel learned from its mistakes. Right now, the invasion and incursions are taking place in a totally different context than in 2006. Hezbollah, politically and militarily, beheaded is on the ropes. The superiority of Israeli intelligence is overwhelming. Thanks to this, the IDF is managing to anticipate all the movements of the Lebanese militia, and what is now expected of this ground invasion is that it will succeed in erasing most of the military capabilities of its enemies. On top of that, as if this were not enough, Israel has also achieved another critical objective: disabling Hezbollah's communications. The group has not only been left beheaded, but also practically incommunicado, which makes any coordination to confront this Israeli operation difficult. And we could say that a modern conflict without communications and without leaders is like entering a boxing ring blind and deaf. So no, we're not looking at a repeat of the 2006 war, but at a scenario that is much more advantageous for Israel. And we haven't even told you the most important part yet. By disarming Hezbollah and eliminating its capabilities in the south of the country, Israel could forge a new type of relationship with the Lebanese state and its armed forces. Because as we told you earlier, no, Hezbollah and Lebanon are not the same. Look at this.
We are all cognizant of the economic crisis that has been plaguing our country, and despite this, our government has taken a decision for 100,000 additional soldiers to be deployed to the south of the country. And this is not a mere detail, quite the contrary, this is a clear political message to the international community reflecting the fact that Lebanon fully intends to implement Resolution 1701, to which we are wedded.
That's right, the Lebanese government is looking to strengthen security in the south of the country, precisely what they have not been able to do so far because of the presence of Hezbollah. And this is something that may prove to be crucial going forward. If Israel does the job of clearing the south of their country, perhaps the Lebanese armed forces can regain control of the area with the help of the UNIFIL mission. They should be good for something, right? And here, right here, a tremendous window of opportunity opens for an area of more than 1,000 square kilometers that was totally under the control of a terrorist group to come under the control of those who should have always controlled it: the Lebanese state and the United Nations mission. And let's not forget the other side of this whole story: Lebanon's interest in avoiding a major catastrophe in its country. Let me explain. The destruction in Lebanon is already significant. The fact that Hezbollah operates in a large part of its territory and that Israelis cannot shake hands with their enemies has contributed to an economic crisis, something that practically makes the economic and political recovery of this country impossible. But if the Lebanese army and the Blue Helmets manage to regain control and limit Hezbollah's influence, they could, at least in theory, not only halt Israeli operations and stabilize the area, but also begin to see a somewhat brighter future. International aid may even begin to arrive. The government does not have many options, and ultimately enforcing the United Nations Resolution 1701, as we saw before, could be the only card they have left to play. Now, is the Lebanese army really ready to take control? Be careful with this question. Hezbollah has been the de facto major force in the country for years, and it stands to reason that it isn't going to disappear overnight, but the opportunity is on the table. VisualPolitik viewers, it's too early to know the answer, but if Israel keeps pushing, this could be the perfect time for things to return as it once was believed they should have been. But while all that is unfolding over there, it's time for you to answer some questions. How far do you think Israel will go in Lebanon? Do you think the Lebanese army and UN forces will ultimately manage to secure southern Lebanon in the long run? Or do you think it's a matter of time before Hezbollah gets stronger again? As always, leave us your comments below and let's start a debate. If you like this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any news. As always, thank you very much for watching, all the best, I'll see you next time.